Hello and welcome to eCore Statistics, Math 1401. We're going to talk about Unit 1. In our course, Unit 1 is the opportunity we have to get into a great start for the course. Here, we're going to learn the basics. We may have had some of this material before, and if you didn't, that's okay, because the basics will be presented again. We need to learn the vocabulary and make sure we understand the meaning of the words. We're going to talk about the most foundational concepts in statistics. So in this course, we look at those things, we study those things, and we get our mind around those things. So that way, when we get to the advanced material, we know what we're doing. We have something to build upon. And so this unit number 1, is a really very important unit of study. We're calling this sampling and descriptive statistics. Statistics has two major parts, descriptive and inferential. And so we're going to get this part down now. A couple things that we're going to study. So let me just mention, if you would, maybe a lesson title as we go through here and a little bit about what we're studying so you know what we're doing, and then some advice. So number 1, we're going to talk about sampling and types. So sampling, we think about a random sample. Maybe someone phoned your home to try to do a political survey. Was that random, or did they just call people from one party? That's a good question, right? How many times have we been on an internet site and someone's asking you for a survey and you go, oh yeah, I want to tell them what I think about such and such. Is that random? Is that a good way to get information? It's certainly convenient, but is that a good way? And we'll want to talk about types of data. For example, if I am comparing two tests that I took, or two class averages, and one was 90 and another test was an 80 average, I know that I could subtract those two and say there was a 10% difference. But think about this. How do I do A minus B? A grade for a course. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Those are different types of ways of describing data. The category of an A, the category of a B. Now, we could go on and on, talk about color types and other things. So the types of data that we are looking at and the categories it fits in are very important. So I hope you get a lot out of that first lesson on sampling and types. Another thing that we need to do with data, our next area of study, we're talking about summaries. All right, summaries. We're talking about collecting and we're talking about organizing. Actually, we're working with the data. If you would, we're getting our hands in the sand. We're getting our hands busy. We're actually, getting into the real nuts and bolts of statistics, which is the data. And we're getting a feel for how people deal with the data. Because when you think about it, all these reports we see in the findings and the displays of data eventually trace back to people working with the data. So by us doing that, we're in good shape and we'll learn a lot. And then we're going to talk about the frequency distribution table. And what that is a table where we use to organize the data. Tables are used a lot in statistics. And matter of fact, this lesson on a frequency distribution table is foundational to understanding the bell curve or the normal curve. And so I hope that you find that lesson helpful. We also need to talk about, in the next lesson, measures of central tendency. Let me put it another way. We need a number. We need a number that we could use to identify or get a feel for a data set. We think about age. We think about income. What's the average age of people in America? We've heard a lot about the aging population. Well, honestly, if we have data, we have to do something with it. We got to get our mind around it. And the idea of knowing a centered data point or data value is important. You've heard these before: the mean, the median, and the mode. A lot of times the income of a particular job occupation is displayed using the median. Why is that? Well, that's because there's some folks that make a whole lot of money and some folks that don't, and it doesn't represent that data set well if you use the mean. So the lesson on measures of central tendency are very, very important. Now, along with knowing one data value, it helps to know the spread of the data. And that's another lesson that we're going to be studying in this unit. Let me give you an example. I have 3 tests, a 79, an 80, and an 81. Okay, what's the average? 80. I have another 3 tests. I have a 70, an 80, and a 90. What's that average? 80. Well, the point is that both have the same measure of central tendency or median or mean. However, they don't have the same spread. And so understanding in a data set the spread of the data, how far the data differ from each other, that is a very, very important concept. And so that variability is important in manufacturing. That variability is very important in clothing. If we've ever bought 2 different size shirts from 2 different places and realized that there's differences between them, or how many of us got stuck buying a shoe size that didn't fit like we thought it was going to fit. So some type of standard way of talking about the variability of data is extremely important. And we are going to land upon one of the major concepts in statistics known as standard deviation. And that'll be great, and you'll enjoy that study. And then last in this unit, as far as lessons are concerned, we're going to talk about measures of position. Measures of position. This started when we were born. When we were born, someone bragged and said, my son or my daughter weighed 7 pounds and 2 ounces. And everybody's thinking, wow, how does that compare with other folks? And then, someone said, my baby weighed 8 pounds and 15 ounces, okay? And people saying, well, that's a pretty big baby. And what they're saying is, in comparison to everybody else, where did you fit on the weights of babies in general? We see this happening in standardized testing. I mean, we're probably over-tested, and it gives us a headache thinking about that. But you may remember on one Saturday, you sat for the SAT. And the SAT has 3 different school areas. Let's just talk about the math. I believe it's from 200 to 800, and 500 would be the average or middle, and then there's this variability there. You also may remember that when you got your report, it said what percentile you were in. I am in the 70th percentile. What did that mean? That meant that I did better than 70% of the folks that took that exam. Percentile is a very important measure of position. We could talk about income level. We hear a lot in the media about the top 1%. Of course, what does that mean? That means people in the 99th percentile in income in our country. And so we need to really understand measures of position, and there's procedures that help us to be able to arrive at that number, procedures that other people use across the culture, and that helps us to get, again, another feel for a position in a data set. So I hope you enjoyed that lesson. By the way, while we're talking about procedures, statistics is a lot about procedures. And so understanding the numbers, understanding the data sets and how to work with them, or the procedures, is really key to doing a good job in statistics. All right, so Unit 1 is a great introduction to what we're talking about in this course. And let's face it, let's give a good definition of statistics. Statistics is the process of collecting, organizing, analyzing, displaying data for a variety of purposes, including interpreting the results to eventually make a decision, whether you work for the government or work for a business or work in education. The data needs to mean something. It needs to measure something accurately. It needs to be displayed properly, and it needs to be understood, and usually it leads to a decision. We're going to do this. We're going to make this policy. We're going to change up something that we're doing here to improve our productivity. So again, that in a nutshell is what statistics is. I want to encourage you to do your reading. I also want to encourage you to go through the task list in each particular lesson. So now this is, yours may not look like this. I'm just going to click on Unit 1 right here. Hold on here. Okay, so I clicked on number 1, and sure, you could see the different lesson titles in this unit. And at the beginning of a unit, you'll have your advanced organizer and some things there. And then in each unit, you're going to have the task list. So if you will look through here, yours may look different than this, and that's okay. But these are the things that are very essential for you to be able to do. You could consider these the bare minimum. If something says optional, then that is, or supplemental. That's something that you could look at if you have time, or maybe use as an intro or review or interest gathering event or activity in your learning that particular lesson. So all these lessons in a unit go together. I did a little introduction to those ideas. Okay, so we talked about the task list, and I'd like to finish by talking a little bit about the calculator. The calculator is an essential part of this course, and you will need the TI-83, 84. And even if you're new to the calculator, if you watch a lot of the videos that are provided for you, it will help you to gain some familiarity with it, and then you'll really appreciate the procedures that are embedded in the graphing calculator that enable you to work through this course, understand what you're doing, and be able to do the number crunching. That is very important. And probably one of the things that you need to always be mindful of is interpreting what your answer is. So we would like, this class to be practical and insightful, but also challenging in how you are interpreting the information in your lessons and exercises. So learn the procedures on the calculator. It is a very key part of the course, and by taking your time earlier and watching the videos, you will be very thankful that you did that. Well, that's all I want to say by way of introduction to Unit 1. I hope you get off to a good start, and I certainly hope that you enjoy the study of Introduction to Statistics.